like to introduce our final speaker, and that's Greg Pratt. Greg's the manager of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Research at the QIMR Berkhofer Medical Research Institute in Brisbane, and he's a descendant of the Quandamooka people of Moreton Bay, but he grew up with the Kuku-Yalanji people on Cape York. Greg has extensive experience as an Indigenous mental health practitioner and has worked on policy research and health services. He's led extensive consultations across Queensland in 2018 for what we call Genetics, G-E-N-E-T-I-Q-S, Genetics, developing guidelines for genetic research involving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. In 2019, Greg led efforts to develop a suite of genomics health literacy resources for Indigenous peoples in Queensland. And in 2020 and 2021, his team will work with community-controlled and primary and public health services to identify the workforce needs for coordinated care models for precision medicine. For the past 3 years, Greg has led over 50 community consultations and engagements across Queensland, and I'm sure that he will speak to this. My screen backdrop was taken in Canada last year, just after Greg and I attended the World Indigenous Cancer Conference, and I see Ginny Chinoweth there. She was over there with us, and this is the fall in Canada. So, Greg, can I pass over to you?
Yes, thank you, Uncle. Now I'm going to try and share this with you so that you can all see. So now, are you seeing the actual presentation view?
All good.
All right, and you can hear me okay?
Even better.
All right, wonderful. Well, look, as Uncle Tom was saying, I myself am a Quandamooka man, descendant of the Ngunnawal tribe, and specifically the Brown family of Stradbroke Island. I grew up with the Kuku-Yalanji and the Kuku-Taipan people in far north Queensland. So for those that don't know, that's about 4 hours drive northwest or northwest of Cairns, pretty much right in the middle of the Cape, the pointy bit of Australia up the top. My role here at QIMR is that I'm the manager for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Research. Like I said, the reason we're here today is to have a bit of a conversation about genomics, precision medicine, and genetic testing. So look, I just want to show you a couple of images and so forth. This is actually my grandmother and my grandfather. So you can see my grandmother is an elder for Stradbroke Island. My grandfather was an Irishman. These are my children. This gentleman over here is actually my father, one of the first Aboriginal relics rangers / archaeologists for Queensland. And this is the reason why we grew up in Laura. So he was responsible for looking after sites of significance in the far north. I myself and my brother here, you can see we're both barefoot, sitting next to a creek up near Laura. And this is country for me, so this is Stradbroke Island. But as I said, I have a little bit of experience of growing up in the north as well. So a little bit, as Alex said, some words to sort of say where I'm not. I'm not a geneticist. My background's actually in mental health, as Uncle Tom was saying. I have a Bachelor of Science majoring in psychology. I never, unfortunately, got registration as a psychologist, but I have spent a fair amount of time working in this space. So, and my interest here is really about the idea of contributing to and supporting community engagement and community voice across the space. Now, I just wanted to bring people's attention to this document, which you might have seen. It's brand new off the press. By our colleagues at IATSIS, and it's the Code of Ethics for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Research. And the really wonderful thing about this document is on page 6 of the document, there's actually a definition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health research that states that it includes all research that impacts or is of significance to our peoples, including planning, collection, analysis, and dissemination of information in any format or medium, which is about or may affect Indigenous peoples either collectively or individually. That only came out, I think, just this month, actually, because we're still in October, believe it or not. But I would say if you're interested to read that, this is the website. You can find it. I can put that in the chat later for you if you'd like. But if you just do a search for IATSE's Code of Ethics, 2020, you'll find that. It's a really good space. This is where I work. So at the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, you can see I'm on about this level here, I think. My office is probably somewhere in here. This is the view out the back window that you can see. But QIMR is actually a statutory entity. We were established back in 1945 to conduct research of significance to the peoples of Queensland and in areas of significance. And obviously this is an area of significance in terms of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health. So people have talked about, the background, the history of significance and the promise of equity as it applies to genomics. I won't go over that in any real detail, other than to say that we understand that approximately 20 years ago, there was a particular project that sought to collect samples from people. That project was called the Human Genome Diversity Project, and due to the way that that project was conducted, some people across the world, First Nations people across the world, made some informed decisions not to be involved in that work going forward. And that was for very real and valid reasons. It has had a consequence in terms of where we are now, in terms of involvement of Indigenous and First Nations peoples from around the world in this space. But, my colleagues have mentioned that quite extensively. Now, what I want to talk with you just briefly, if I can be brief, and those of you that know me that might know that that's difficult at times for me, is I want to talk to you about a body of work that we've done over the last couple of years, starting with developing up a policy document, essentially, which is this document here, Genomic Partnerships, which is a set of guidelines for the conduct of genomic research with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Queensland. Now, you might ask, why only Queensland? Well, as you might know, there are 500 different groups of Aboriginal people prior to, settlement some 200 years ago. And I would be out of line to speak with respect to other groups. But what I do know is within here in Queensland, there was very much an interest in talking with people from a research perspective about whether they were interested in genomics research. And we had some initial conversations with researchers here at QIMR and with our partner organisations in Queensland, so academic sort of institutes, about why they were interested and what were the barriers in terms of why they hadn't engaged with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in this state to start genomics research. And there were some belief statements that came to the front, and these sort of included the things like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people don't want to be involved in genomics research, that basic medical research is not acceptable to Indigenous peoples, that research involving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples is complicated, consultation process takes a long time, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are opposed to research involving a collection, analysis and storage or storage of human biological material. These were the belief systems of researchers. Not necessarily the belief systems of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, but these were the voices of researchers. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to go out and confirm with the communities of Queensland, the stakeholders in the space, that's health service delivery research and academia and ethics, whether these actual beliefs were founded, or whether we could put them to bed and we could sort of say that people are interested, because they actually serve to restrict the amount of conversation that was happening. So we went about establishing a team, and what I will do is just go through the ways and the steps that we actually tried to roll this particular policy project out. We established a team here at QIMR, myself, our deputy director, David Whiteman was involved, as was Nick Waddell, John Pearson, Miranda Vidgen and Sid Kalladharan as project officers. And we then went about trying to coordinate with stakeholders and with groups of who had an interest in the space. We actually established at the next level, level 2, a governance body. and we adopted what I like to call a regional engagement strategy. So for Queensland, it's a fairly large state, about 3 times the size of Texas, you know, second largest state in Australia, and I believe one of the largest populations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Australia, second only New South Wales, and I believe it's predicted to shoot that in the not too distant future. And of course, it's home to the Torres Strait. We're always making reference to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. We probably need to think about the fact that Torres Strait Islanders represent a very unique group of people. So we actually had this approach, which was for the regions of Queensland, Far North Queensland, North Queensland, Central Queensland, Darling Downs, and Southeast Queensland. We engaged a number of people who represented, you know, interests in those spaces from either academia, service, health service delivery space, community control, and they formed the basis, which was our project steering committee. From there, those actual project steering committees members became our regional champions, and they actually served to help us to engage with each of those regions in very targeted spaces. That was community control, health service, policy personnel, researchers, ethics experts, and the public hospital and health service space. And then we actually went about conducting some actual meetings with people in each of those spaces. And the conversation served a very distinct purpose, and that was one, to ask people over some workshops. So you can see here we had 5 7-hour workshops initially to identify core content that needed to be included in Genomics Pathway document. The other thing I will say was obviously the first question we asked was, do you want to be involved? Do Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people want to be involved? If they do want to be involved, what do you think are the key messages that you'd like to pass on to researchers, health policy people, health service providers about how to undertake this body of work? So that then became the core of our Genomics Pathway, our Genomics Partnership document. We also conducted a series of public forums introducing the topics of genomics and precision medicine, and that was in partnership with the Community Control Health Service sector for Queensland. Now, the other thing I will say that was important was in terms of people have talked about the idea of you know, the importance of sustained long-term relationships. So we asked people what their opinion was, what they thought needed to be in a document. We went away, we drafted that into a document. Then we went back for a second round of what I like to call confirmation workshops, where we asked people if what we were reflecting in the actual draft document reflected the conversation that they'd had with us. So that was about accountability, that was about transparency, as people have mentioned, is very important. The regions that we went to, in that instance, Weipa, Thursday Island, Cairns, Townsville, Rockhampton, Brisbane and Toowoomba. We had a number of people attend the affirmation, the initial workshops, and a number of people attend the confirmation workshops. Key topics were identified for inclusion, cultural appropriate protocols, case studies, the education and the importance of it. Now, people have still got my screen up. You're right.
Yep.
Cool. Consent, the importance of researchers or staff in terms of education, the importance of co-development. You can have a look at the document. You can similarly, these are the broad sections that are in it, and you can find it on the on this web address if you want to. I'll put that in the chat window so you can find it, and you can read a little bit more. Now, the other thing I will say is that obviously this ended in a level of interest, and that conversation had been started and it had been pursued, and that's where we ended. No, it's not. Because obviously, as people have said, once you start a conversation, you want to be able to continue that conversation, and engagement doesn't just start and stop with, you know, raising an issue, but you need to be accountable for that shared journey. You know, people told us they were interested, you know, and they wanted to know more. So what did we do with that? Well, you know, based upon that, we actually said that, okay, there's an interest in learning more. People told us there was interest in learning more. Can you develop up some literacy, some health literacy resources that might actually serve to give us some information about these spaces? So the next project we went on to was what we call IG Health, which is the Indigenous Genomics Health Literacy Project. And we developed up some health literacy resources with the communities, with a community working group. So we started initially with a 2-day community group. comprising members from all of these different towns that you can see here. They came together and they discussed what it was that needed to be in a health literacy resource, what also was their media and medium preference, and what were messages of significance and importance to include in there at a service level when we're talking about genetic testing. This is the mind map. There will be a test later on about, you know, your recall of that. So, you know, just memorize that quickly. I'll move on. And then with that mind map in hand and some ideas of what our working group had actually suggested, this is our working group here, I must say, we went out again for a second round of conversations with people. So these were 11 two-hour workshops with communities. These are all the communities that we went to. As you can see, it was more than the first time round. And we asked them for feedback on a draft health literacy resource. We also, like I say, asked about their idea and preference with respect to medium and media. And we asked if they had any local artists that they might be able to recommend who could actually help us to sort of, you know, come up with imagery to represent the regions. Because what people were saying to us is that a resource for a particular region may not represent or engage with an audience for another region, you know. So what we ended up with was a suite of visual pieces that actually came from the different regions. And we went and we included those in some trifold brochures. People told us trifold brochures were their preferred medium for communication. And we finally actually also developed up a video because people told us they had a preference for animation. And I won't show that, no I will, because this is actually the thing that I think people were most excited about.
Your blood, your story. In our world, we are surrounded by things that affect us and make us who we are. Some can make us stronger, some can make us sick. But sometimes when we feel sick, it isn't easy to find out why or how to get better again. Sometimes the answers can be inside of us, in our body and in our blood. Inside of our bodies exists a world that can tell many stories about us, about our connection to one another, and the world we live in, about our connection to earth, air, and water, and about our past and our future. We have knowledge inside of us that has been passed down from our ancestors for generations, knowledge that has been handed down to our grandfathers and our grandmothers, fathers and mothers, and so on, all the way to us and our children. All these stories are kept in something called genes. Your genes are made up of your DNA. This is all through your body and all through your blood. Through tests, our doctors can read these gene stories to learn more about our health. This is called genetic testing. Looking at these stories in detail through genetic testing can help your doctor identify medical conditions that we and our families might have or may get in the future. It can tell us the chance of intellectual or physical disabilities, the risk of your baby inheriting a genetic condition, or if you have a family history of a genetic condition such as cancer. Doctors can use the information from genetic testing to design unique treatments that will work better for you. This new technology is called precision medicine, and your doctor can provide advice about whether you should look into genetic testing. Medical research organisations like QIMR Berghofer are working hard to better understand the stories of DNA and genes for the benefit of everyone. Understanding our gene stories on the inside will help us get better on the outside. Through this medical research, we are helping everyone live healthier, happier and longer lives. Reading gene stories is an important part of understanding conditions such as infectious diseases, mental health, chronic disorders and cancer. If you or your family have any concerns about your health that might be linked to your gene stories, you can talk to your doctor to discuss your options. If you would like more information about genetic health and genetic testing, you can visit www.health.qld.gov.au/GHQ. Genetic Health Queensland is a free service and is part of the public Queensland Health Service. If you know of someone who might benefit from this information, a family member or friend, please share this video with them. Thank you.
All right. So now, as you can see, that was very much a collaborative effort with a number of parties over a fairly significant amount of time, but it is only part of a journey that we're hoping to continue, and a partnership that we're hoping to continue. What I will say is that it's extraordinarily important in my view, you know, and as I think Alex had said before, you know, the speed of trust is essential to all of these things, you know. This is a longer term vision in terms of, you know, involving people in a conversation. It started with genetics, which actually resulted in the actual publication of that Genomic Partnerships document, where the target audience is in particular researchers. It moved on to IG Help in response to what the collective told us were their interests and needs with respect to health literacy and what they wanted to find more out about. Now, the next thing that we're actually doing at the moment, we've been working a little bit this year, and it's in partnership with Quake and with so the Queensland Aboriginal Islander Health Council, which are the peak body for Aboriginal Islander community control health services in Queensland, and their members and associate members, and Queensland Health, is to develop up a integrated care model for precision medicine in the primary health space. So a model that will serve to sort of see the public hospital health service working more hand in hand with the community controlled health service, and what workforce needs look like in terms of that, what service sort of integration looks like in terms of that, what are enablers and so forth to realizing that. And then hopefully, so we're looking to have that available by mid-year, we will look to try and attract some funds to pilot that integrated care for precision medicine in the primary health space, so the model going forward. That's about me. This is the project team. It's grown a little bit over the course of time as we've done a variety of things. So I'd like to pay my respects to all of these people for being involved and sharing in that journey. These are our partners, and that list continues to grow. And like I said, it is Queensland focused, but I would suggest to people that there's benefit in doing that as well. Jurisdictions are different, one space to another space, you know, policy, health service models, and the key players vary, you know, space by space. So, you know, and Queensland, as I mentioned, is a fairly large space in and of itself. So I'm very appreciative of all of these people, all of their champions in being involved in this journey. In particular, Arnie Yvonne Cadet James, who's based in Apunapima, Angela Young in Kelly, and also Julie McCochran. So Julie's from Genetic Health Queensland, and Kelly and Andrew from Quake, and to all of those member organisations throughout Queensland that have supported us in our journey, and all of the community members who have attended all of those workshops with us. That's me. So yes, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. That was excellent. And, you know, I guess there's going to be a whole range of questions, and just a reminder to everybody to go into the chat box and get the questions up.
Yes, I did. So I just responded in the chat to Carmen's question, as well as it might not have been clear in the way I presented, because I was trying to go through so much stuff. and sometimes I'm not always clear. But I understand. So one of the things I mentioned at the start was that an opinion, a belief held by researchers with whom we spoke with from QIMR and also from our partner research universities and the like, was that they believed, so this is researchers, believed that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were of the opinion that basic medical research, biomedical research was not appropriate. So what we did when we did go to ask people about, you know, whether they wanted to be interested, I wanted to be involved in genomics research and so forth, was to sort of confirm some of those myths. And well, is it a case that biomedical research isn't acceptable? And almost unanimously, the feedback that we got from participants, so that's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander champions, people involved in those workshops and so forth from across Queensland, was yes, they definitely want to be involved. No, it's not inappropriate, but what we do want to do is have a conversation, and we want to be involved in that conversation, and we want to lead that conversation so that we can make decisions about some of the specifics that people might want to talk about. Or might, you know, in terms of data collection, what's sacred, what's not, how long to keep sort of samples for, who's involved in the project, and all of these sorts of things, which is the whole conversation that we sort of tend back towards today, which is data sovereignty and ability to self-determine, and our sovereignty, our right to sovereignty. So, you know, I can very much say people do want to be involved, and the people we spoke with said that they do want to be involved, but they want to be involved in a way that's meaningful. Hence the name for the actual Genomic Partnerships document, partnerships. You know, it's all about starting a conversation and then continuing with that conversation with people. Relationships are built, you know, and I think as Alex said again, I'll reflect on it, it's at the speed of trust, you know, build those relationships. People need people.
Great. So Greg, from my side of it, in all the conversations, do you think people were disposed positively to wanting to learn more and get involved in understanding more about precision medicine and so forth?
Absolutely. So that, I mean, and that video reflects, so the decision to move on to a health literacy project was not a decision by this team, by the project team. It was a decision that all of the people we spoke with said that they felt. It was based on their need. They identified that they did want to be involved, they did want to know more, and the way to actually know more was to develop up some resources that spoke to those spaces, to precision medicine, to genetic testing, to genetic health and genomic health and research more broadly. So absolutely, and what I will say is that if there's a testament to be seen is that the work we've done, I can't speak for all groups, and I do suggest people need to, you know, have those conversations locally and with their own sort of communities and so forth. But with the communities that we spoke with the service sector and the stakeholders that we spoke with, absolutely there was an interest and an appetite, you know, and going forward, those partners that we started the journey with continue to be involved in this conversation. And as we move more to sort of realizing what that conversation means from a clinical front, those partners are actually the leaders. We step back away from the, you know, from the space that is medical research, hand over the information to the people at the clinical front, i.e. the community control health services is the goal. And you know, they lead the charge. You know, this is our journey as a peoples to be undertaken. So yeah.